You're watching The Wave. I'm Franc Han Shih. Amid economic slowdown, Thailand has silver lining to boost its growth as the tariff rate has been finalized at 19%. The central bank has also reduced its policy interest rate to 1.5%. But what are risks and opportunities in this economic turbulence now? Joining me is Mr. Burin Adulwattana, Managing Director and Chief Economist of Kasikorn Research Centre, will give me more analysis about economic momentum and risks. And thank you for your time, Mr. Burin.
Thank you, good Frank.
Right, so I talk about the 19% tariff, very important for Thailand. And according to the latest report of Kasikorn Research Centre, GDP might revitalize at 1.5% at this moment. What's your analysis about the overall economic performance?
Yeah, I mean, compared to, if you compare this to a year ago, you might be complaining that, we get a tariff of 19%, but, just compared to the tariff data announced on April, we breathe a sigh of relief that, at least we are probably on par, near roughly the same in the region. So at least we're not losing market share in a big way. And another thing, which is, I probably shouldn't say it, but, compared to India, we're sort of, okay, India is getting 50%. So otherwise we might have lost some product category that might move production base to India. For example, seafood or jewelry industry. So that was our worry. But now within the region and compared to India, so our ASEAN is quite safe, and among ASEAN there won't be a big relocation amongst our members. So that is a big sigh of relief. But looking ahead though, if we compare to other regions, which I think the US might want their production base to move, for example, Latin America, which they get roughly about 10% except Brazil. So that could be a worry, but that's for another day. So at least for now, we get a much better outlook on our export. So we upgraded our export, from I think 1.5 growth to about 3.5% growth this year. And at first, we expect the second half we get a contraction of about 10% for export, minus 10. Now it's only minus 7.5. So a bit better, but this has come from the fade from front loading that happened in the first half of this year. And so this second half we see a contraction, and this will carry on to the next first half of next year as well because of front loading. And then we start to see some normalization in our export and trade patterns.
So you talk about the contraction of 7.5% for export, although of course that's a front loading part.
Front loading, yeah.
What's the impact to export volume? And of course, I think export is very important for Thailand, as many people know already. Of course, right now we got that like 19% to US market. What's the risk for export industry now?
I think the risk for now has subsided substantially because the tariffs are quite on par, and then a lot of our export to the US now, the majority is now under exemption. So for example, electronics, the majority of the products are are exempted from tariff. And then auto export, auto parts, everybody gets 25%, the same all over the world. So now it's not just the level of tariff, it's all about relative. So I think so far Thailand has, escaped this Trump tariff sort of relatively intact for now. But of course, these things can change overnight. You can see, I just read today that, look at India. You thought that they would be getting a better deal than everybody else, but they end up getting the worst deal at 50%. Probably Brazil, along with that, get 50%, even though Brazil is in South America. So these things is up to the administration, whimsical mind. They can change at any minute. So what we now face is a lot of uncertainty going forward. So I think for Thailand now, export, it's not about tariff now, it's all about competitiveness. It's all about production relocation, which is, I have good news to tell you. Regardless of whatever problems we may have, domestic political uncertainty, declining competitiveness, maybe the lack of, highly skilled staff. But we still see a shift of production diversification into Thailand. You know, I think this is a new trend. You know, we speak to a lot of our Chinese counterparts. They said now they're not sure what Trump is going to do or this administration going forward. So they set up facility almost everywhere. You know, Latin America, in Thailand, in sometimes India, maybe India not so much now, Vietnam. So they're just hedging their bets. Because they don't know one day Thailand might get higher tariff than Vietnam. The other day Vietnam, you know, some other day Vietnam might get lower. So they just putting it all over the map now. So in that sense, Thailand is benefiting from, you know, a flow of FDI.
Yeah, so it means that they do not want to, I mean, investors, they do not want to put everything in one basket.
Yes.
They want to put the risk in different kind of situations, of course, the regions too, and other regions too. One part that we have to talk about actually is the strength of Thai baht. Of course, the more stronger Thai baht is, so the more impact to export industry. Do you think actually that Thai baht strength is also a risk for export industry?
Yeah, it is. It's a threat. It's a threat to our export industry because, you know, we're not the most competitive country in terms of production. So I think any little help, you know, is welcome. But the Thai baht strength is obviously, you know, putting pressure on our exporter and our competitiveness. So, and you know, having one of the strongest currency in the region is not helping. But luckily, our tariffs are sort of in line with everyone else. But I think that is something to do, some homework for the next, you know, BOT governor and the Bank of Thailand to chew over, because I think, you know, how do we get the baht, you know, we don't want to be the weakest or the strongest. We want to be in line. But now I think, you know, exporters have been complaining that, you know, we're getting, our economy is not doing well. You know, I think this is a sort of mystery to a lot of investors. You know, economy not, you know, is weakening, political stability and a lot of structural problems. But Thai baht is still quite strong. So this is quite a mystery for a lot of investors. So I think this is something, you know, for the next BOT governor and the MPC to think about how to, you know, have Thai baht. Because I think a lot of times the BOT doesn't really speak about the strength of the Thai baht directly. It just say, okay, we make sure that they're in line and, you know, it's according to market, you know, dynamics. But I think, you know, this is something that we have to think about, you know, what are the root cause why Thai baht is strong. Yeah, but, you know, weaker Thai baht will be welcome.
But do you see the trend of depreciation of Thai baht coming? Because of course, according to economic theory right now, maybe for Thai baht is on top of the X curve. Do you see the lower bottom coming for Thai baht?
Yeah, but eventually, you know,
Yeah.
but we don't know when. You know, something similar happened to Japan. You know, everybody bet that Japanese yen would be weaker for, you know, prior to this period. But, you know, 10 years ago, you know, everybody was betting on weaker yen. It never came. But now you can see, because the fundamentals are finally catching up with Japan. You see a weaker yen. So I think something similar is happening to Thailand. You know, eventually the fundamentals will dictate where the baht will go. You know, based on the fundamentals, we should be a lot weaker. You know, declining competitiveness, declining population, outdated export industries. You know, aging population. So these are the things that will weigh on Thai baht in the future. So I have no doubt that in the future the baht will be a lot weaker from now. But the million-dollar question is when. You know, I think people want it to be weaker by the end of the year, which I think it will largely depend on the US dollar.
Yeah.
Now it's the US dollar story. So I think, but it's probably going to be, I think there will be a sort of a moment where, you know, people realize that maybe tariff is bringing a lot of, you know, I don't know, tariff income, and also the export performance will not be too bad for the US, and the US may be able to attract a lot of inbound investment into the country, and this is going to be supporting the dollar. But when is the inflection point, we're not sure. But I think towards the year end, once the Fed said, okay, maybe tariff is not going to be you know, having too big of an impact, the US can lower interest rate, I think that will, and the tariff, reciprocal tariffs are in place and not changing too much. I think that will bring sort of clarity and policy uncertainty. And I think the dollar will follow its fundamental with stronger growth, within its tech, drawing in a lot of capital from, for FDI. I think that's when we'll see the baht coming weaker.
It might be a turning point for Thai
There will be a
baht.
turning point, yes.
Yeah, depends on what you said. The Federal Reserve, if they, Jay Powell will really decide about the Federal Reserve rate, that will be the key. And coming back to Thailand again, of course, we understand that amid tariff impact right now, we also see China's product influx to Thailand's market too. According to the Ministry of Commerce, they already say that Chinese goods flooded into Thailand totally nearly 1 trillion baht, an increase of 220 billion baht this year. Of course, we see that Thailand's market has been disturbed by this influx of Chinese goods here. So, how have these imports from China influenced competition in Thailand? And what about the Thai products there?
Yeah, I mean, that's why you see that our manufacturing production index has been declining for years. I think this is largely because of the influx of Chinese goods. Chinese goods are obviously well known for, being lower in price, very, very competitive, and that put a lot of pressure on our domestic producers, and that's why you see a lot of factories close down, and this is having an impact on probably labor employment. But the bigger impact you see, sometimes you think of Chinese product, maybe clothing, now maybe some vegetables, now maybe some consumer goods. So these are, putting a lot of pressures on our producers. But going forward, the bigger item would be the automotive. That's not just producers, not just Thai national producer, but it's also Japanese and German manufacturers located here. As you can see now, a lot of disruption is happening in the auto market. Prices are becoming much more competitive, which is good for the longer term for Thai people. They have more choice. And I think, we welcome competition, but obviously we want it to be a fair competition. They have to play by the same rule, level playing field. So, some people are complaining about Chinese product, but it's the consumer's choice. Yeah. They like the product because it's cheaper, good quality. So other people have to be much more competitive. So that goes. It doesn't matter if it's you're Thai, you're German, or Japanese. As long as you're competitive, consumer will come back. So, but obviously, the incumbent players in Thailand are feeling the heat from Chinese competition. But now not only the Chinese competition, because I think one of the big reasons that we got 19% reciprocal tariff with the US is we have to open up our market to the US products too. Yeah. So now it's not just Chinese products, it's US products. And I think we can't just open to these two markets. Finally, we probably have to open to products from all over the world. It will be a global competition rather than local.
But would that be a final disruption to Thailand's market? I think, of course, policy intervention, you understand, is very important to protect Thailand's products. Right now, of course, we see Chinese product coming to Thai market, and we are to open the market to the US market now. So how can the government really protect Thailand's product?
Yeah, I think they're trying to open up quite slowly. I think a lot of it, they have some quota. For example, I think they had to open. I think they had to agree to open the pork market, which the U.S. pork price is a lot cheaper than Thai price, maybe 30 to 50%. So if they do come in, now we said, we only allow 1% of U.S. pork into the Thai market. But this 1% based on what we're not sure. Whether the government can control the 1% is another question. But if the U.S., let's say, pork flood the Thai market, then that could be a lot of disruption to the local producer. But some of it are beneficial, especially we had to import some, for example, animal feed, the corn from the US, which is a lot cheaper. The benefit is that the price is a lot lower than the corn grown around in ASEAN. So we get cheaper corn. We also reduce the PM 2.5 pollution problem. I think we're still waiting for the dust to settle down, how much we can import or whether our export, for example, for our chicken would be disrupted. So this is a thing that we have to closely monitor.
Right. I have to mention one part, of course, one of the tailwinds for Thailand's economy. I think it's, of course, the central bank already has cut the policy interest rate to 1.5% by 25 basis points. Of course, central banks say that, okay, it's a way to help vulnerable group on the ground to get more cash flow in the market. How do you see that? How do you analyze this policy rate cut? And do you see more cuts coming, or this is a better rate, best rate now?
No, I think we see more cuts coming. Actually, we are quite surprised that the BOT went ahead with a cut yesterday, because we thought that because I think this current MPC had a sort of hawkish stance that the economy is holding up quite well. The export performance is looking much better than thought. So I thought they would not lower the rate like they did yesterday. But we expect that since the incoming governor, Kun Vitai, I think he's been known to be a bit more dovish, and his previous interviews that he would like to see lower rates. So we expect now, I think at least 2 rate cuts. I think there will be a rate cut at every the last 2 meetings, MPC meetings of the year, and we are focusing on where would be the terminal rate. Now we are thinking whether it would be 0.75 or 0.5% next year. Of course, this is going to help ease the debt burden for our private sector, for everyone who's indebted, lowering the borrowing cost for the whole country. It will help, but the big obstacle is the sort of the transmission mechanism is not coming through, because I think banks are quite cautious. Even though we have low rates, but because the tightening credit standards are putting pressure on loan growth, and last year we had a negative loan growth. This year we're likely to see a negative contraction, because I think banks are quite careful. There are many sectors. It doesn't matter that lower rates are helping lower the borrowing cost, but because of the risk and uncertainty that are present, so the banking analysts are quite careful of extending loans, or some sectors that are being hit not just by tariff but because of declining competitiveness. So these are the concern, and a lot of our structural issues in Thailand have not really been addressed. How do we tackle the overhang of the high household debt, the not so good educational standards in Thailand, the declining population, the tax revenue that are declining, the aging population. So these are the things that I think the government has to tackle.
So we've still seen a lot of structural problems.
Structural problem, because our potential growth, and just to add to that, our potential growth has been coming down quite significantly over the years. I think even 10 years ago, I think our potential growth was 3 to 4%. Now we say maybe potential growth is 2.5, but we're not even achieving that. We might get 1.5, 1.8. But next year it's going to get even lower because of these structural headwinds that we're facing. So how do we do that? How do we tackle our education problem? How do we tackle the shortage of high-skilled labor? And just to add insult to injury, now we have a lot of Cambodian workers migrating back to Cambodia. That's putting a lot of disruption in some of these manufacturing business and agriculture, restaurants, and food industry.
Compounded with all problems you talk about, structural problems, risks to banking sector or other sector too. What's your prediction for the economic performance in 2026? Of course, we talk about Kasikorn Research Centre predicting 1.5% for this year's GDP growth. What about next year?
Next year, it's probably going to be in line. We're trying to finalize a number, but I think it's about between 1 and 1.5. So as I said, it's very hard for us to get back to 3% unless there's a drastic change to the economy, the inefficient agricultural sector, the overly complex laws and regulations. I think these have to be addressed. So it's like a new impetus for Thailand, but we need a serious reform to our our economic structure.
What does that mean? Does that mean that we're going to see even slower economic performance, or even the R word we don't want to talk about?
I mean, we could definitely see, there is a high chance that we might see recession in Q4. But this is because of, but this is arithmetic, because the first 2 quarters, we saw a big boost from front loading of export. And this is coming down. As I said, export, we expect to see negative 7.5% in the second half. And compounding with the border tension, and that is putting off a lot of tourists. It also coincided with the sharp decline in Chinese tourists into the country. And now we have a travel warning by many countries because of border conflict, even though Bangkok is quite far away from the where the area where the conflict is. But many seminars, many business meetings have been cancelled or postponed because of this. This is just adding more and more problem to weigh on our tourist income this year.
Right. Before we end this interview, I think we better to leave it positive signals. So of course we understand that, as what you said, maybe next year 1.0 to 1.5% for the GDP growth. Any stimulus or impetus that we can see on the ground right now? What about for the government view?
Just to end on a positive note, obviously there are not, I just mentioned bad things, a lot of bad things on the Thai economy because I'm an economist. I'm supposed to be a bit more cautious. But of course there are bright spots for the Thai economy. For example, we see an influx of data center investment coming into the country, and we see diversification of supply chain still coming into the country. But whether that will translate to a lot of income for the local population, that's another problem. That's another story. So we see that stimulus is going to be quite hard. We see, I think farm income, because farm income this year has been hit. We get, better rainfall this year. The weather has been much more cooperative. So we get a lot more produce from our agricultural sector, but that's depressing the income. So it's a paradox. You produce more, but you're worse off. And that is the problem for our farmers. Millions of farmers are being hit by declining rice price, palm price, rubber price, cassava. So these are all being hit. So the government is issuing some sort of farm subsidies. That's helping somewhat, but I think it's a long-term challenge. How do we get people not relying on such small-scale farming? How do we add food production? So we don't want to produce just raw material or just ingredients to feed another country. We want to maybe process or add value to our agricultural sector. That's another challenge. But Thailand is probably full of potential. But how do we unlock it? And I said something like clean energy. We are blessed with plenty of sunshine. So I think our solar investment is gonna boom, and that's gonna help us with our clean electricity, lower the price going forward. But how do we turn that into more competitive, production sector, to help our production? We don't want to be just a cheap place to produce anymore. We want to add value. We want to add R&D. So there is something to do with human resources. That's another long-term problem.
Right. So policy direction is very important. Government's direction to implement upskilling, upgrade our agricultural sector is very important too. Right, today we get a lot of insight from Mr. Burin Adulwattana, Managing Director and Chief Economist of Kasikorn Research Centre. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Khun Frank.
Thank you. More news to come.